This is Triaging Time, and I'm your host, Dan Luna. On today's show, we have Captain Drew Williams. Drew currently serves as the Support Service Division Captain for the Golden Police Department and Commander of the Jefferson County Regional S.W.A.T team. He has over 22 years of progressive law enforcement, leadership, and management experience. He started his career in 1998 with the Golden Police Department. Additionally, he spent 8 years with the Arvada Police Department, where he obtained the rank of commander and led for 4 years. Drew then returned to the Golden Police Department in June of 2019 at the rank of captain. Drew has a master's degree in business administration, operations management, and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He has attended executive command schools, including Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command, the National Tactical Officer Association Command College, the University of Denver Daniels School of Business Public Safety Leadership Program, the International Association of Chiefs of Police Leadership in Police Organizations Program, and other advanced leadership schools, to include Northwestern University Supervision of Police Personnel, Colorado Association Chiefs of Police Supervisory Institute, and the National Institute of Ethics. Drew has an extensive background and operational experience in the tactical environment. He has been operational on hundreds of tactical deployments, functioning as a grenadier, an entry team member, and team commander. Drew has been operational at the team level for 10 years and has instructed multiple tactical disciplines for 17 years. His tactical foundation is credited to historical lessons from the Columbine High School shooting, Killdozer, famed bulldozer incident in Granby, Colorado. Plate? It wasn't Plate. What was it?
Platte Canyon.
Platte Canyon High School hostage incident, and several other active and officer-involved shooting incidences. Drew, welcome to the show. Sorry, I messed up on that word.
That's okay, Dan. Thanks. Happy to be here. Thank you very much. It's an honor.
So let's dive right into it.
Okay.
Not holding back any punches. We're going to dive right into it. Are you ready?
What's your style? Let's roll.
Yeah, let's go. Life, leadership, volatility, and trauma. If we only had a few minutes, what advice would you share with us?
Man, only a few minutes just for those critical topics. That is totally your style. Nothing about putting the pressure on or anything. Yeah, I guess I'd have to dive into a little bit of self-reflection on those. I think it's one of those things for me where honestly it comes down to a lot of self-awareness on who you are as an individual, some of the processes you've been from, experiences you've learned. And I think a good foundation in self-awareness leads into each one of those topics you talked about, whether it's life, leadership, leading through volatility. I know that's your favorite topic we're going to talk about, also in trauma. So I think it's just truly being able to reflect upon yourself, where you currently sit, and how operational or impactful you really are.
So you mentioned self-awareness a few times in there. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on self-awareness?
Yeah, I think for me, it's why it rises to the top for me personally is it's always been that constant inner turmoil or inner battle with me. It's lessons I learned from being young and inexperienced entering into this field. Also, as I've matured and going throughout my 20 plus years now, and then my chase and my dream and desire being a chief of police one day it's this constant everyday battle and everyday struggle I go through with myself just to truly hope and reflect on where I sit currently, and is it a productive area, whether it's in my life personally or whether it's in my life professionally. And so it's just that constant struggle, and the ability of an individual to truly and honestly reflect upon themselves is difficult. I think it's uncomfortable, and I think it's something that most of us tend to shy away from. We look for, I think, to others for reassurance or guidance in a lot of areas, but often neglect the internal reflection that needs to happen
Yeah, 100%. So in the bio, and you just now you meant historical lessons, and there were some pretty big ones in there. So everything from Killdozer to Columbine, huge events. What were some of those takeaways, and maybe how have those things affected not only you but the officers today, or those departments today?
Sure. So, I mean, as you heard there, I entered into this field in 1998, and Columbine was just a year after. And so I think you look at between Columbine and the Hollywood bank robbery, there's significant changes that occurred in law enforcement that were outside the norm. I mean, prior to that, to give a few examples, I mean, you get into a patrol car and it was, try to hide the shotgun. The shotgun was like the biggest thing, the scariest thing the public saw. And it was that battle of, do I keep the shotgun in the trunk or do I have it mounted in between the front seats? And depending upon what community you were in, the shotgun, as an example, was contentious, all the way up to tactics, right? And you see how it impacts us in the tactical world. Columbine alone set us up to where we've learned lessons now into our active shooter realm. Prior to Columbine, it was a surround and call out issue for patrol, and they would surround the building as they did down there, and they waited for a TAC team to respond. As we've found, when there's active loss of life or there's active death occurring, shooting incidents, it does not benefit us to wait. And so it shifted the whole mindset in the tactical arena, especially in the SWAT arena, as to our response, let alone our weapon systems and our internal tactics within the active shooter world and the environment, how we move through hallways, schools, classrooms, etc., really pivoted on that critical incident that was there. And again, Hollywood bank robbery brought in the need to have an advanced weapon system such as an AR platform, better protection you saw in those incidents where they were able to fend off law enforcement based on their body armor, things they were wearing. So monumental shifts as I was entering into the workforce as a young individual. And really it was kind of like the movies. When I first came in, it was like, holy cow, this is what I've seen on TV, and that's fun and exciting and dangerous. And I think that's what draws a lot of people to our profession. And then back to that self-awareness piece was, oh my God, I could actually get hurt or killed. It's kind of one of those things that you had to process really quickly and at a very young age. In your experience and your background, I mean, it's the right in your face right now, and how much can you take, and what's your maturity, your experience, and your background. Up until then, you have your childhood, which develops you, and then carries into the adult world, has a lot of different impacts. And so those events triggered a lot of good learning experiences, not only at the individual level, at the team level, then again at the command level, I think is how we've steadily progressed across the country.
So you said something that really resonated with me. So that realization, so that self-awareness component of, hey, I'm not invincible and I can actually get hurt. What is something that you share with younger officers around that mindset?
Hitting it out of the park, that it can happen. It can happen any minute, any second of the day, anytime, whether you're, as our environment has shifted here, it's easy to say on duty, right? I mean, we're always prepared, or you should be always prepared on duty to utilize up into deadly force in certain encounters. And it bleeds into your off-duty roles and your personal life. And I think there's a healthy balance there that has to occur. You have everything from what I'll call like kind of the Tackleberry sense of where you never turn that switch off, all the way to kind of laissez-faire, where it's just, if it happens, it happens. I'll kind of respond to it. And so that's a huge spectrum for a brand new individual entering this workforce, or a brand new person has this vision of what a police officer is, what they've seen on TV shows of everything from a crime is solved and tried and put behind bars in 30 minutes, all the way up to these big elaborate movies that kind of are transpiring that's out there. So again, had I learned at a younger age that you need to take time to really reflect, put measures in place, and strategize about not only the immediacy of what you're into, but also the long-term effects of it. It took me a long time, Dan, to realize that we're talking numbers of years, that I can recall the very, very first suicide I ever went on. And it always stuck in my head, right? And it was a young kid that was ironically just a year older than me at the time, had hung himself in a college dorm room. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't grotesque. There was nothing particularly bothersome about it, other than it was the only I can reflect on still to this day why he lingers in my mind is the proximity to my age and our youth. Mm-hmm. All the way up through traumatic incidents, officer-involved shootings, where you're putting people down in those situations. And so you just don't know what's going to stick with you. And I think it took me a long time, to put the arrogance down a little bit and not be the tough guy, especially since I entered the tactical arena really quick. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was the youngest SWAT operator to make the team. And so I had to grow up really, really fast. And I had that kind of machismo behind me a little bit and swagger that you're part of a SWAT team. And as you heard some of those calls, we were in the mix. It wasn't just being a part of a team that was formalized out there, didn't get a lot of utilization. The Denver metro area, we're one of the top tier teams that's out here. And so we get utilized, as you heard, all the way up into the mountains. Granby's about 2.5 hours from here. And I was taking on a guy with a homemade tank, essentially, and a bulldozer, based on our team capabilities, how we got called up there. And so you have just a wide spectrum. You have to learn really fast. And so for me, it took a long, long time. And eventually, after a critical incident, stepping into counseling to understand, oh man, that had a profound effect on me in my early stages in my career, my maturity level.
Are you okay if we explore that a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
I'm open book, brother.
What's that?
I'm open book.
I love it. So what were some of those, I guess, personal lessons learned? So once you got to that point of hey, wow, I'm holding on to this, and now, actually, where did that realization come from? Where did that self-awareness first? What brought that to the surface? That there was something more going on?
I don't want to say it was one incident. I think I'm the classic example of the glass spilling over, right? Just too many kind of stockpiling on you, and then it dribble. Finally, just going to go over the edge and fill in a glass. And so I think I had, again, I didn't give myself. I've always been a very active go-getter, go chase things, not scared of things, and pursue in my career and make it very vocal where I'm going to head, I'm going to go. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on just the basic levels, right? I didn't enter into patrol and spend a base lot of time in there. I went right from patrol to motors to SWAT to, moving on to leadership. And I just kind of really, really swiftly progressed. And so at a young age, I was trying to accomplish a lot of things. And I think that was where, for me, the buildup and that pursuit of wanting to reach higher levels, probably the magnitude of things that I saw, everything from, like I said, a simple suicide to horrific car accidents that I was in charge of investigating, as an accident reconstructionist, to the shootings, to major incidents. It kind of spoiled over. So for me, it was right around, I want to say maybe 2006, 2007, where we bled in there. We had Platte Canyon High School shooting in that one too. Unfortunately lost a small girl in that conflict. It caused a lot of reflection to see, even when you do everything right, sometimes things are out of your control. And again, being young and in my early 20s, I guess I'd categorize like this, Dan. I was very good at the cop stuff. I was shitty at my personal life, right? Mm-hmm. So where I could focus, where I felt strong was in uniform, where I felt empowered was in uniform. I knew how to hit those things out of the mark. Where I was struggling to learn was, how do I handle my personal life along with the magnitude of this job? And so for me, my finances sucked. My relationships sucked. I was in and out of things, dating, whatever it was, and didn't really have a real steady foundation. My support system was there. My parents are fantastic. I had a great family life growing up. I just had the kind of machismo. I got on my own and do this thing and figure it out, and I don't need help, right? That's not what we're supposed to ask for. We're supposed to be the big tough guys going in the job and doing this thing right. And so, again, I think it took just enough of those incidents hitting me, and each one of those, I could mention a couple of them, have little pieces that stick with me. And truly, that's what caused me to kind of spill over. And then being forced, what I think is very good, right? At the first, I mentioned counseling. Law enforcement there's such a stigma around seeking health or help or guidance in the mental health world. We've gotten better, I would say, over the last 7 to 10, maybe. Early on in my career, it was very taboo. You didn't really talk about it. So if things were occurring, you didn't really know about it. There was no peer support. There was no outcry mechanism other than you knew, hey, there was this doc and you went to it if you were having major problems, right? Well, the team, being exposed to those violent incidents, those were mandated at certain times after certain critical incidents. And even then, they weren't still really forced upon you until later on in those years. And it wasn't until I had a doc in front of me that I could relate to, that knows the profession, knows law enforcement, knows what police officers go through versus the clinician who is just there as a general to the civilian kind of world in that asset, is very different, right? Because if you don't know, you can't really talk or relate to. And it really took my counselor. She hit me right between the eyes and has her whole background is in this and runs this thing out here in Colorado. And so her waking me up to what we called, I think she called them red lights. You don't realize how many red lights you ran in your life until you go back and reflect. And so that's where it kind of has turned for me. It was a loss of a marriage. My first marriage, I lost that, had to deal with going through that and building a family after that point. What's my future going to look like? In a parallel, being very focused on my job was very good. My job has always steadily increased, but I'm outlining for you the rocky road that my personal life went through. And I think that's something that we can never teach enough, talk about enough, to let those that are coming in to be resilient know exactly what's going to happen to them. We do a good job of showing you the cool, fast, fun stuff, but we're getting better now, but in my academy days, they didn't come in and tell you, hey, you're going to have this occur to you. It happens to everybody at some level. You need to be prepared for this. You need to have a will in order. You need to have, finances in order. You need to have, just things like that. In the very early years, there was very little emphasis put on that, I guess I would say.
So there's a question that I was going to say for the end, but just because it's in line with what you're talking about right now. So now, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self? What advice would you give your new guy self? New guy Drew. What would you grab that guy by the scruff and be like, listen here, new guy, this is what you're going to do? What does that conversation look like?
Oh, man, I probably would have said tone it down. And I mean in the sense of I'm not very loud, outspoken. I'm a very passionate, and I've been called a silent observer many times, right? So I'm very quiet. I see what's going on. I learn from it. I react, and then I always speak about it. I've never been shy about speaking my beliefs. But I think for me, it was just that it's okay not to have. I guess it's interesting. I don't know what you went through, right? I mean, you're chasing the pinnacle, and I think in my eyes, the tactical arena for me was the pinnacle, especially as a young kid coming in the job, early 20s. I mean, those were the guys we looked up to. Those are, at least in my book, who I wanted to be. And so I was very driven in that. And then I had this kind of weird parallel track of leadership. I always had this desire to earn it and then try to lead. And so what I was very good at in my career, again, was I created a roadmap. I knew what steps and what pieces of the pie I wanted to achieve, i.e. positions or assignments, and what years I wanted to have them done by. I was very meticulous in that regard, had a very clear plan. If you look back at my resume, I mean, I've accomplished a lot in 20 years, a little over 20 years. And sometimes I would just go back to myself. I think I would say, hey, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to focus a little bit. Not be the master of all, maybe, and everything. Maybe just focus in on a couple key areas for a while and learn. I think I'll be honest, I struggled in the very beginning was in the sheriff's office. You have some experience in this. Is that they used to have this theory that you spend 2 years in the jail to mature, right? To learn the criminal, to do all this kind of stuff. I didn't go apply at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, but based on that reason, I was like, I'm not working in the jail. I didn't give it the credit it deserved. I didn't give it the credence or understand what they were trying to teach with that methodology because I didn't see it in line with being a patrol officer and chasing and putting criminals, in handcuffs and then putting them in jail. And so I think I just would tell myself, it's okay. You're not going to be reflected on any poorly. Just keep your ambitions in mind and drive and don't overextend, I guess I would say.
So if we could go back to part of the earlier conversation and now connect a couple dots with when the counselor first started piercing you, and now what you know now, and now your younger self, if we could connect those three dots, what advice would you give to your younger self as far as implementing different habits from where you started at to where you're at now? Like what would those different habits look like? Maybe in the realm of like self care or leadership or processing stuff, being in a volatile environment. So anything with that, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because one of the other things that I had assignments in and held for a number of years is I was the field training commander for almost 3 years. And so you're essentially just talking to recruits, right, about how we're going to game plan their career. And some of the things, I guess, I've only not only done myself, but also referred down to, you can see it when somebody's brand new coming in the door, they just don't know what's in front of them whatsoever, and a couple of the recruits I had recently, they literally killed somebody in the first 5 weeks of their career, right? And so you're guarded on the sense of, yes, this is cop work, but is this everyday cop work? And then what's the long-term effects on these young individuals? We're talking young 22s, 23-year-old kids, literally shot and killed somebody in 5 weeks. Put a badge on, carrying a gun, they're in phase 1 of training, and that shifts their whole vision of what law enforcement is moving forward, let alone the peer base that's around them and even at the senior level. So I think to kind of wrap it all back up a little bit, if I can, I may not tie them in as tightly as you think, but having the right role model or right access to programming or somebody to walk you through and guide you through what to expect, I think is critical. Not the traditional FTO that's just like, here's what you need to know, the XYZs, here's your CRS, here's your law. But, oh, by the way, here's how you deal with finances at home. Here's how you deal with a relationship. If you don't, it may not be me you're confiding in, but here's a direction or a team that can help you be holistic. And I think that's where law enforcement, you see it with our suicides. I mean, just had another one. Didn't even get a chance to tell you about dealing with this year. And it's just how much it bleeds on you and how much it impacts you. And then it stresses out to the family and just the whole dynamic. If there was a better way, and I just left a conference in Miami here right before the COVID incident happened. This is what we were talking about is the International Association of Chiefs of Police doing the fitness background. We have now studies and funding that's driven to this from the federal government to officer wellness. And it's everything from your PT to your mental health to train, everything in package, where it's awesome because here we are now, 2020, having the initiative, but this concept hasn't been ventured for decades. And so getting the leadership at the top who came up under a certain era to acknowledge the needs of the true era, the new era that's happening right now, is that dichotomy of trying to shift those mindsets, right? The old school of, I went through it, so you're going to go through it. I mean, again, and so trying to make sure that we do what's best by the individual coming in the door. And that's what's exciting now about being a leader, not only in the SWAT world, but in the police department as a whole, is we're vesting as much as we can in that entry level, low level, and we're brushing off the taboos and we're putting it in your face and we're calling out these key issues that need to be focused on. Because it's all about resilience and making sure we take care of you as the individual. What I learned years into this job is, sadly enough, Dan, we're widgets, right? If something happens to me today, that place ain't stopping, right? They're going to keep forging forward. Yeah. And so realizing there's some reality there too. And so not giving too much and overly passionate in certain areas and kind of having that healthy balance. And one thing I'm excited to be a part of is we're trying to form, like I said, that officer wellness health-based team that has multiple areas to be brought out as far as, like I said, everything from finance, PT, all kinds of different directions, psychology, a balance-based team effort, rather than just handing it to, hey, sergeant, handle that, and you're going to figure this program out because you're the expert. So there's a good shift occurring right now which didn't exist before. Yeah. So those new people coming in the door need to understand those resources are there, not taboo, be driving towards all those mechanisms. And it's going to take a while, but that cultural shift will occur, I think.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a great place that I think we're at right now to at least acknowledge it, because that's a beginning of change, is just creating awareness around it. hence even this show, Triaging Time. It's just to create a platform, a community of fellow first responders, military, medical folks, just practitioners, academics, of sharing information, so you don't have to wait for that once a year convention of, talk about suicide and depression, addiction, and all the other things that come with the job. That is taboo. That's now becoming less taboo and more into light. So I really commend a lot of the agencies addressing it. And it's real interesting too, and you mentioned something of that older group. And I always love talking to the older group because they're like, oh, I went through this, and they're like this hard, like stoic. And it was just like, yeah, so how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's that working out for you? And
Right.
they're alcoholics, they're on their 5th marriage, like, and it's just like, well, I went through it too. You're like, hey, there's a better way to go through it.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about that. Can we have a conversation about that? Or am I just totally screwed in 20 years?
Right.
Is that the only answer that we have for the up and coming firefighter or, police officer? Is that our only answer, or is there a better answer?
There's got to be a better answer. That's what we're talking about here. Resiliency, like I said, and keeping people sustained in their career and healthy. And you're absolutely right. I mean, when I first started, I remember super old guy, grizzled guy, been on the job forever. It was booze, broads, and bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the warning I got as a young guy.
The 3 Bs.
That didn't help me as a 21, 22-year-old kid. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Booze, broad. I mean, I got the concept, but to see it play out in fruition, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll never drink that much, whatever. I'll never run around on anybody, whatever. I'll make those bills, and then I'll be damned if I go back through and very close friends that I've gone through. If not all 3 of those were a factor in ending careers, ending lives, ending marriages, right? I think that's the piece that I like to tease out, because I am a younger command officer, right? So when I step into a room, I always try to share that perspective of one that has been closer to the line doing operational work than some of these guys have been. They might be 20 years removed from actually physically putting handcuffs on somebody or doing paperwork. So I always try to share those perspectives and push back. And just because, like you said, I went through this doesn't mean that you're going to go through this, and we need to invest in our people. The old adage, like you said, the multiple wives, or I've been married 30 years, but there's been 3 wives in there. That's not something to be necessarily proud of, right? Or the stigma, like I said early, was, and I love my senior guys, and when I got on a team, there just was a lot of, we're bros, and we're going to be bros, and whatever is said amongst us is said amongst us. And there were some sketchy things that we had to, okay, I can't say nothing, I shouldn't have saw that, kind of things were going on. You had to really keep it narrow. Where now, as a team commander, my role in the last 5 years as team commander up there has been really trying to shift the cultural environment from what it was to what it could be, and then hopefully somebody takes that reins beyond to where I sit and keeps driving it forward. We have a very family-oriented approach. You've seen them, you've been with them, you train my guys. It's a very different, close niche, not cliquey, not you've been here, been there, I got this assignment kind of concept that was there before, into literally bleeding down into the family environment. So we have a wives network, we have, support set up in that system that never existed ever before. We have the operators support group that we have amongst us too as well. And so, plus I bring in guys like you who are experts and see things in different directions. And rather than being reactive, the reason why I love what you do is we're on the forefront. We're trying to gear this up before this thing happens, so I know what to expect, how to work my way through this thing, and not just do the stop sign effect of, we need to put a light in there, a stop sign in there. Why? Because somebody died. It's just reacting after something occurred. That is the piece I think we're still struggling with, Dan, it's easy to react, but now, like you said, you did it. You deflated a room full of trigger pullers and SWAT guys when you guys said, hey, raise your hand the minute they first saw you, how many guys have killed somebody? Right? The air went out of the room, and we're literally like, did you just ask that? Like, that's a taboo thing, but there's principle behind that. I think that is the struggle in law enforcement, is we expect you to reach that pinnacle at a moment in time. There's no rehearsal. I mean, you can train all you want, right? But in that moment, what you're perceiving, you're reacting, and then you drop the hammer on somebody. The worst thing we can do is neglect you in that moment and not support you and talk to you and help you through, or acknowledge on the front end that it's reality. And so COVID, this has brought about a couple of different things for us where you're now not only handling the criminal element, I now have to attach a pandemic to that. And how do I keep people from being exposed and healthy and being efficient in their job? I got some very, very strong pushback on some concepts that were out there, but that's my job, is to push, to at least put on the table, here's what we want to try, here's how I want to limit exposure. Have you thought about these things? Kind of the grandiose what ifs. Columbine. Everybody, yeah, what if, right? That's never going to happen. Well, it hits Columbine, Littleton, Colorado. Place you didn't think it was going to hit, smacked you right in the face. And then we were averaging conflict in Jefferson County or surrounding Jefferson County every 2.5 years dealing with active shooters since then. So you look at it doesn't matter. I mean, it can occur. And so I guess my point is, one of the teams that's masterful for that is the LASEB or LAPD, right? SWAT. They're visionaries, and they think about these things, and they're planning for that crazy event to occur down to the barricade that happens. And that's got to be our perspective and area we train in. Sometimes shifting that upper echelon's mindset of that could really happen here, we need to train for that, is still a struggle in some areas. So then you bleed it down to mental health, and it gets messy, I guess I would say.
So one thing that I've seen and that I've worked with your team specifically about is I refer to it as balancing the scale. So if you look at all the research, all the funding, all the focus is after the fact. Hey, somebody now has PTSD, somebody now has some addiction, somebody now has something, and the numbers are huge, and now there's this reaction to it. And so it's like, oh, how do we fix this? Like, there's suicide, and now the numbers are rising, and what do we do? And it's great because that question needs to be answered, right? Those questions that are posed needs to be answered, and we have amazing people looking at that stuff. Really, what I'm trying to do and the work that I'm trying to do, I refer to it as pre-traumatic coaching. So it's now doing the upfront work, and for me, it really started out doing working at the Naval Academy, and just kind of the same thing like you, like being a seasoned operator and then seeing these young men, these young women get ready to graduate. I'm just like, holy smokes, reality. They're not ready for it. And when reality is going to show up, and when reality punches them in the face, they're just going to have this blank stare. So how can we better prepare these up-and-comers? Right? So some of the stuff that I've worked with you guys on, I'd actually like to have you just talk about it and talk about like maybe how it helped your team out, or things that you're doing right now to really help those young officers, whether it's in the SWAT team or post-academy, that are going through to get ready for the streets or to get ready for that barricade.
Absolutely. So it's a commitment to bettering yourself, or commitment to bettering those around you, right? And so I think when bringing you in, my initial thought process was, how can I deliver somebody of this magnitude and this background that's multifaceted, that bleeds into the criticality of what we're facing right now in our SWAT team, right? So I have a young, very immature tactical team at the time, especially when you came and saw us. So there was a lot of group dynamic that was occurring. There was a lot of different, to your point, I might have put the pin on, or I might have trained, but I hadn't seen nothing yet, right? No bullets have been flying. No conflict has happened in front of me just yet. So I think I'm ready, but I don't know yet. A lot of stuff that was occurring. What I really appreciate, which we're not done yet, is because you still got to help us and get through these areas, is the pre-event providing the why. I guess I would say that you're providing the why, you're providing the what is going to happen, what's anticipated to happen. It's okay. You might have this triggered response or this emotion, you might have this thought. Letting people know on the forefront how to prepare, so as it occurs to them, so different than fighting, right? You talk about, we get in the ring, boxing, whatever it is, jiu-jitsu, whatever. We plan it, we drill it, we plan it, we drill it. So we're going through those emotions and those reactions. And so we know and anticipate, so we start moving chess pieces ahead of the other guy quicker. And so we can react better. And I think the number one selling point I'll tell you, anybody else out there listening to this is truth. I mean, we put a guy down on a shooting, right? And it's uncomfortable as hell. We got judged all over the place, myself included. The trigger pullers were called your training, right? They were not previous trigger pullers. So now you have guys that never done it, now have done it. And in their shoot team investigations and their subsequent interviews with their psychologists, they're referencing this guy, Dan, that Drew brings in, that mentally helped me prepare, not attach a morality to what I just did. I had an operational function I had to accomplish. In their lives, the two of them that reference it still to this day, about how they've been able to come to peace with what they had occurred, right? So it is awful. It is not what we're designed to do. We're there to save lives, not take lives. But in the moment when it has to happen, i.e. a suspect engages you, you have to already have that thought process or work your way through it or have some understanding of what's about to occur to you to then be resilient on the backside to work your way through those processes. And I think it's a testament to you, Dan, and what you're focused on. And you have two living, breathing individuals that credit you to the way that they have been able to work their way through the de-stressing and coming down from those critical incidents. And particularly what was interesting about them, which is these two end up back in another shooting. We end up back in another shooting 3 weeks later.
Wow.
Okay, so the thing that happens is, this is my mindset now as their tactical commander, is where are they at operationally? Are they ready to go back in this again? If we get them cleared and not, and just because they get cleared, are they really cleared to be back operational to have this thing happen? And that's where it's really, really critical. And so I think law enforcement, if we can get an area of focus on pre, during, and post, not just post, and a little bit of during that occurs right now. They kind of talk about that, but how to set myself up for success, just like we do with driving, firearms, arrest control, case law, right? We do all this pre-active stuff, but we don't mentally take people through that same spectrum.
Yeah. Man, I love this, and I'm looking at the clock right now, and time has flown for sure. So what's interesting is the stories that we tell. In specific, there's two stories, right? There's the story of, hey Drew, what happened? I pulled over the suspect. As I approached the car, the suspect came out. So there's that story, that narrative that happens. The other story that happens that a lot of people don't track is now your body. Like the story of your body, of like, oh, I felt this in that time of action. So kind of those three phases. There's that preparation phase, that action phase, and that recovery phase. So there's a story of like, hey, what's my body? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Mindset, how we think about something, that pattern, emotion set, how we're feeling about something, that pattern. So what are those patterns as I'm getting ready for something? And sometimes there's rituals or protocols, and everything from like pro sports to law enforcement, military, you hear these different things. So what's that preparation look like? Hey, as I'm in it, how does that pattern shift? So now we go back to what you originally said, self-awareness. So now it's just really, so a lot of the leadership coaching and what I'm trying to do is now specialize really with first responders or with folks who work in this volatile environment. So it's noticing those patterns and not giving them like, hey, this is what you have to do, or this is what you should do. No, it's like, hey, here's a menu of things. What makes sense for you? Because what makes sense for you may not make sense for me. So now just to help them create a different story with a different outcome. Hey, you don't have to be a cop for 30 years and then be miserable at the end of that career, which you may see in other senior officials. Or you don't have to be this grumpy, like you can be happy in life and still lead. That's okay. It's okay to still have a healthy relationship when you get home. So it's changing the narrative, opening up perspective, and just helping folks navigate the other story of like, man, after I put that guy down, I did the protocol of the department, and then I went home. Hey, what's the story of my body that my body's telling me? Like, man, I'm feeling it here, or how am I processing it? So now those individuals are better able to speak to it. So when they sit down with a counselor, or when they sit down, and now they're given those tools, right? We're really good at technical tools. We're not so good, and we still have a lot of work to do kind of on the human element especially in and around violence.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I think it's easy to, I guess kind of where I struggled in my personal life was the shooting and killing piece is like up here, right? So I'll deal with it when I finally do that. What I failed to acknowledge was all those other little things that happen along the way, whether it was I didn't get this promotion, or I had this blow up, or I dealt with this difficult suspect, or I dealt with a suicide, or dealt with a car wreck. It doesn't have to be the easy, obvious, like, oh, when there's a death, then that's what's going to get me, right? It could be a compilation of a lot of those things that I think we neglect a lot of times in law enforcement. Is it's easy as leadership to say, when a critical incident happens, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. But what if I'm just a patrol sergeant and I know that you went to 3 dead body calls tonight, then you go to another 2 dead body calls tomorrow? I mean, how much of that's going to take, right? And most of us just do our job and get along with our thing, or went to a nasty domestic that, for all we know, might be similar like what I live at home, right? Or what kind of dynamic is there? And then how are they decompressing? How are they going home? And are you checking status with them when they come in on shift? There's just a lot of things that at play here that I guess I would draw attention to those listening that, it's not the glaringly obvious incident that's always going to get you. It could be a lot of those little triggers that we need to be paying attention to, So I know you and I had another conversation about leading in my assessment, although some might say is easy or some might say is difficult, it takes a lot of work in the sense that you have to be paying attention and truly care about people and notice triggers, notice things are manifesting, what they're putting out, to your point, what stressors are bleeding on them. And you have to be paying attention. A lot of times we get caught up in our own stress or the next project coming or the next call for service. Even partners on the street can really tell what's off, what's on about somebody. And if we can work through those avenues and at least have directions of support that's accepted, that's going to be a critical facet. That's where you guys come in that sense of when it's accepted, and when you have testaments and real life stories like the 2 I referenced for you, that's what sells it down to the ranks. And they go, this is important. I do need to invest in this right away from day one, from the academy level on, so I can be as healthy as I possibly can be through this career. You're right. So I'm not going to be the old grudging, pushing a radiator around. I'm not going to be the pissed off command member, right? Doesn't like anybody or does it my way or the highway. There's a lot of things at play that I think that area is so critical. I was thinking about you when I was in Miami in that context of, I literally tried to find vendors or try to find other mediums out there that are addressing this. And that's an area that is truly lacking, is the pre-event. Every time I raise my hand and what about the pre-event? What about that? And
nobody knows.
Those are great areas we're researching, and those are great areas we're looking, but nobody has that foundation that is there. And I guess living, breathing, seeing it, and sitting in those interviews and watching my guys return in that fashion, I wish I would have had that, right? In those events I was a part of, I wish you would have had those things. I mean, if you can go back and look at the guys that my team that was in Columbine, fractured. You lost senior guys, you lost very, very good tactical operators because of the trauma that happened just in that incident, right? And you had this first time you had kids involved, and it was horrific. And seasoned guys just said, hey, I'm done. I don't know, right? COVID, you have people right now, and it hasn't happened to my department, but other departments are questioning, is it really worth it if I go outside right now as a cop? Because you're sending me into the fray to deal with this on something that's going to get me. And I can't shield myself. I can't, you can do everything you want, but it's a pandemic issue, not a shooter, right? And so there's a lot of different things that are occurring that I think is going to be super critical right now to address.
Yeah, I agree. Man, this time went by too fast, Drew.
Oh, we're there?
We're there. So as our time comes to a close, how would you summarize everything that we covered?
I would say invest in yourself, right? Slow down, think, put purpose and direction into place, right? Just as much as you chase that career path, as I had mentioned, I wish I gave in as much credence and focus to that other part of the pie in the tree, right? It's one of those things to be successful. And I think it was culturally and however you're shaped and whatever your vision is of being successful, mine was passionate in my career and being the best that I could be, and didn't realize that to be this has, your family, your personal life has to be in order the same way. If you neglect that, it's going to break at some point. And so lessons learned, seek out those that have been there before you and truly be humble and learn and invest in it.
Love it. Do you have any final thoughts?
I'm actually kind of speechless. There's a lot. I was taking a lot of notes. I'm scribbling like crazy.
Your summary was great.
I really appreciate the opportunity to even be on here. I mean, truthfully, I do. I know there's a lot of people that's going to reach out to. Mm-hmm. If I can ever be any help to anybody, my door is open. I'm an open book. We're willing to share concepts and ideas. And I think the more that we do these, interact with each other, it just helps us all get better in the long run.
100%. Love it, brother. Thanks, Drew. So, Drew, thanks for joining us. If you know someone who would get something out of this conversation, please share this video with them. And of course, like, subscribe. Remember, you don't manage time, you manage yourself. Leadership starts with you. Thank you.